You guys can break out in thunderous applause at any point. No, just kidding. This is what happens in the afternoon of a panel.
We have to earn this engagement tonight. Hello, everyone. I'm Colin. I'm with Axios, or at Future Defense. Thank you for the intro, Sam. And today I'm with Rep. Pat Ryan of New York. This will be fun because we have a Jersey boy interviewing a New Yorker, and so hopefully we don't beef too hard. On the way in today, I found some remarks from President Trump about the F-22 Super and the F-55, and it seems everyone else is talking about it. Do you have any intel or thoughts on those two warplanes?
Yes, and just before I answer that question that I also just learned about on Twitter, just to introduce myself, I represent the Hudson Valley north of New York City, which is where I grew up. It also is home to West Point, which is my alma mater, so beat Navy to any of the... There we go. Okay. All right. Everybody's paying attention. That's good. And I serve on the House Armed Services Committee, and last year I got to do this with you all with Rob Whitman, who's my bipartisan battle buddy on a lot of these defense innovation reform issues, so he couldn't make it. But it's awesome to be with you, and I just want to thank Second Front for having us today and all you all for being here. Yeah, has anyone heard of the F-55 before today? Show of hands? No, so I don't have any intel that, I'll leave that to the great defense reporters like you. Yeah. But I do think it kind of does speak to this tension that a lot of us are feeling, which is frankly some excitement to see things shaken up, to see some big, aggressive, let's do things differently, but then sort of okay, so what's the substance here? Who's gonna do this? Who's gonna execute it? Does this align with our strategy? How are we gonna pay for it? And that's kind of, I think, almost a metaphor for the moment within this first 100+ days of the administration. I do think on the F-22 Super, which is a term I think you're coining. Yeah.
The president did.
The president coined. Okay. I think that's a great sign of, rather than over-designing and over-engineering something that's going to come 20 or 30 years later, pushing to do some pragmatic upgrades on something we already have that's proven to get capability out there quickly and save money, and then still leave decision space to do other things.
We're going to hit on a lot of what you just mentioned in kind of those opening remarks, so we'll get back to that. But our chat today is dedicated to the defense of tomorrow. Let's start there with maybe like a quick assessment. What does the future of defense look like to you?
I mean, I honestly think it looks like, hopefully looks a lot more like this room and other similar events that I've been to than the corporate boardroom of Lockheed or Northrop. God bless them, but that's, I think, needs to very quickly sunset and pivot. And I'm sorry for those from those companies that are in the room. I probably upset you. But I think if we don't understand the massive head start that our adversaries have in whatever you want to call it, China calls it civil military fusion, but what is our small d democratic version of that, and how do we get back to what we did in the lead up and during World War II of fully marshaling both the true like commercial innovative brain power of the country and bringing that to scale in a way that we certainly haven't really done since then. I think we all know that's what we need to do. I hope that's what the future of defense looks like, and if it doesn't, then I think we're in real trouble, and it's one of the main reasons that I'm in my second term in the House, and one of the main reasons I wanted to get on the Armed Services Committee and work on this is I think we need louder, more pushy, more impatient voices pushing the Pentagon, pushing whoever needs to be pushed to disrupt and speed that up.
And to that point, is it Washington defining the future, or is it a Beijing or a Moscow?
I still am all in on Washington defining the future, and maybe not Washington, actually. I think the United States of America certainly defining the future. If Washington, D.C. is defining it, then that's a little more concerning to me, frankly, having been here a few years now. I think it's about getting back to not Washington driving the country, but startup innovators, whether in my home state of New York and Silicon Valley and all across the country, leading academic minds at our great universities, war fighters out on the edge, like getting back to that as what's defining the future of defense and not. I was actually out with Admiral Paparo in INDOPACOM, and he said something like, we need capabilities at the speed of combat, not the speed of committee. And it feels like we're at committee speed at best, and that's not going to meet the moment.
And so you mentioned Congressman Whitman earlier, and you both launched the Defense Modernization Caucus a little bit ago. Give us a quick summary maybe on short-term goals, long-term goals, and then metrics of success. How are you guys going to hold yourself accountable to the mission you laid out?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about what Rob Whitman and I started actually at this conference last year. I think it was around this time. We had just launched this caucus. For those of you that aren't Congress nerds, a caucus is kind of like a club, basically. So it can either be something that you just show up for every once in a while, or something that you really put energy into and that you invest in and that you do something great with. And Rob and I both, it was primarily his idea, and he very graciously asked me to help. And so it's a bipartisan group of first House members, and now there's also a Senate equivalent. So it's bipartisan, bicameral, specifically focused on both long-term, how do we fix all the obstacles and hurdles that a lot of you all are battling in terms of our acquisition system, procurement system, and all those challenges. And then very immediate this year in the annual defense bill, NDAA, what can we specifically, tangibly do? And we're actually set up a portal to take in feedback and input and amendment language from anybody and everybody. So for example, last year we got passed, just in our first year, we got passed a few provisions on speeding up ATO to get better software onto network and out more quickly, on hiring flexibility and authorities for the DIU and other innovation engines within the department to bring in better talent more rapidly. SCIF access for earlier stage companies, which is something I think we've all battled. So we were able to get some pretty good wins just in the first year through the defense bill. And we want to, we're doing that again this year as we come up on the annual Defense Authorization Act. And so I really would invite, if everybody's willing to participate in that. We do, regular meetings. We have our site up for the House Defense Modernization Caucus. So please, get involved or find me after.
And so how does Trump 2.0 either complicate or streamline these goals?
Good question. I guess I'll show my political views a little bit here. One of the things I'm most excited about, one of the few things, frankly, I'm most excited about in the new administration is this space, is at least the intent and the language of the executive orders we've seen from the White House, coming out of the Pentagon in terms of speeding up, CSOs and more effectively using OTAs and other, just breaking the gridlock that, again, you all have been battling. I used to battle. I was at 2 defense tech startups before Congress. So, we're seeing the right words. And so I think it's very complimentary so far in terms of the promises and the vision, which is great. I am concerned about the execution, though, because half the people that helped build these ideas have been kind of purged out of the Pentagon in the first few months, and so that's concerning to me. And we still don't have senior appointees in these key jobs, so it's a really risky, volatile time to lose momentum on all the innovation progress that we've seen, and I am concerned about that, and we're trying to push for that to not lose that momentum.
So we have a timely question from the audience related to that. And so let's jump on that. This person asks, the DoD is massively backlogged due to an abundance of empty desks where contracting officers used to sit. How do you resolve that to get the innovation you mentioned?
Massively backlogged on processing contracts, I'm assuming, or?
I think so.
Yeah, I would love to follow up with whoever that was to understand exactly what's playing out, because part of the challenge right now is we don't have a full view. I don't think anybody has a full view of exactly what's happening in the building right now. Again, saying the right things at the big level, at the top level, but what's really happening on the ground. So would love to follow up on that. And I do think this is an example of well-intentioned, yes, there's always excess that needs to be trimmed and tightened up. But where you do that and how you cut that really obviously matters. You all know that in your businesses and even your households. And I worry that there were really broad brush, intellectually not super thoughtful cuts made, and so that is concerning. I do think in general we need less contracting officers and more warfighters and people trying to drive projects to fruition. But if you're stuck on a specific contract or something, that's actually something that the House Modernization Caucus, we're trying to help. If you're not getting an answer from the executive branch, come to us and we're willing to make calls and push people or try to advance a good project forward. That's something that I think is important and part of our responsibility.
Fantastic. We'll get back to the cuts in a few minutes, but just a few years ago, people didn't want to be seen in the same room as defense tech, right? You think about Project Maven or you think about IVAS or something like that. That has clearly changed by the attendance here and all the other defense conferences we all go to. Why do you think that has changed?
I mean, I don't think that's changed for probably everybody in this room. I mean, a lot of us have been like pouring our blood, sweat, and tears into a mission we believe in as patriots and trying to drive through a lot of the slowness and friction. I think what's changed is a few things. One, clearly the urgency of the threat environment, seeing our adversaries catching up or even passing us in many both conventional and sort of asymmetric capabilities. So the urgency is ratcheting up. I think that's obviously not good in a good way where markets and investors, as you all know, are seeing wins and more successes to make clear that there is a path from startup to success within defense tech, and that will hopefully, we want to keep that cycle going and not leave anybody stranded in that, so that virtuous cycle continues. So I think that's a changing factor. And look, I think the American people are really smart and understand the world is very dangerous, and that security, if you ever had any doubt whether that matters, it clearly matters now. And they also know, in my opinion, that what we've been doing has not largely worked. Like, we're spending nearly $1 trillion. We're potentially, at or over $1 trillion, but I don't think people feel like macro that we're necessarily safe. And so I think actually from my district, folks are wanting us to shake things up and do things differently, take a hard look at everything that we're doing and kind of not go back to the old traditional playbook.
The $1 trillion for defense spending in FY26, what's the gut reaction?
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of, right? What's the gut reaction to that? And how does that square with this Doge vibe we have in Washington? How do you square that much money with so many cuts as well? I
mean, with all respect to the media, I think that narrative of what is the top line matters very little. Honestly, like what's underneath that? What's the share going to true, new, innovative commercial tech and solutions and capabilities? It's still pathetically low. It's better, it's up. But depending how you measure that, it's anywhere from 1 to 2 to maybe 10% if you're being generous of the total spend going to really new, innovative things that are gonna have massive long-term ROI. So I get concerned when the main way we talk about it is a top line number that to most people feels so, I don't know, what is $1 trillion? It feels so abstract. And we need to really break that down and have different ways to measure this. This is something I've been trying to push within the Armed Services Committee is like, we're not looking at we're looking at inputs and processes, not outputs and capabilities and results. And that's what we hear from, warfighters and combatant commanders and leaders all the time, yet we keep using that process. So I do think we need to continue to grow our defense spending, but that, again, I think the right way to slice it is, are we sinking more into brittle, over-engineered, slow to be built, easy to be copied capabilities, or are we doing truly American, scrappy, innovative things? And I think we still need to very much swing the pendulum to rebalance that.
That was the most polite media jab I've ever been on the side of, so thank you for the kindness there. There's lots of chatter these days about Pentagon and military transformation, as you're well aware. I think I initially pitched this segment of the talk as a lightning round, but maybe we can break it out and get some nuance in here. I would love, first of all, your thoughts on the Army Transformation Initiative, including, cancellation of M10 Booker, FTUAS, and even the merging of Army Futures and TRADOC.
Yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart as an Army guy. Macro, I think it's really good and really needed. I love seeing the Chief of Staff, General George, working with his civilian counterpart who's worn the uniform and being willing to shake things up, to disrupt, to piss some people off, which they certainly have in some of the decisions that they made. And I think, on some of those bigger ones that you mentioned, the Booker is a perfect example to me of things that absolutely need to be sunset. It was designed to be light, fast, mobile, and instead was like literally too heavy for the 101st to use it. You're supposed to be able to fit 2 of them in a C-17 and you couldn't. So like the main elements of why we needed the thing in the first place were not being met. And so that's absolutely the kind of thing that needs to be sunset very quickly. Same thing with the legacy UAS. Glad to see them moving towards more high scale, attritable. And what I really like about this is that I think General George really thought this through in terms of starting at the brigade, the maneuver brigade level with the Transformation and Contact Initiative, where they piloted these things, saw what actually worked in multiple theaters with multiple different kinds of maneuver formations, then use that to inform a service level change. The one thing I do have to say though is I think we're really failing constitutionally to not involve Congress a little bit more in that process.
Did it catch you by surprise? Were you?
Well, I get why they did it, but they essentially built this thing under cover of darkness, knowing that it was going to upset a lot of people. I think even within the Army, not a lot of people fully knew the details. And I get the need to do that in today's very politically tough time where you have parochial interests come out to defend systems we don't need. But to me, that's concerning in the long term, that there has to be that good, healthy back and forth of somebody to be pushing, somebody to be asking the devil's advocate questions, because I love General George, but they're not going to get everything right. And I think it's helpful to have that back and forth.
The natural follow-up then, I think, is about Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, who said in a recent interview, it would be a success if a defense prime closed its doors in the near future or under his watch or something to that effect. And that's a paraphrase. Would you agree with that? Would you like to see that? Or where's the gray between that black and white?
I absolutely agree with it. I mean, I think that is necessary but not sufficient, though. I think just seeing a defense prime close is concerning if there's not a counterforce to that, which would be, how do we get 10 or 20 or 30 medium-sized companies that are on a trajectory to succeed them with new innovative capability, much better way of working, the right talent models, essentially 21st century companies instead of 20th century industrial companies, which were great for what they needed to do at the time. So I commend, again, the Secretary and the Chief for being aggressive and correcting in the right direction, but it would be a problem if we don't replace that, obviously, and we should say that. It's
a competition thing, not a squandering business kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think he said it in that way, but it's fundamentally un-American that we don't have competition in the arguably most important defense and national security sector. And I think that's an argument that anybody can get, and obviously the people in this room get that, but I think the American people actually get that as well.
Third question in the not so lightning round.
I said absolutely.
No, yeah,
one
yeah,
word.
Your thoughts on Secretary Hegseth wanting to cut at least 20% of 4-stars and I think 10% cut to general and flag officers?
I was a lowly Army captain, so I'm fine with it. I think probably directionally right. But the question is, at that level, of course, the people really matter. The individuals really matter, and I think we can all recognize our talent. These are folks that we've invested multiple decades in training and educating and risking their lives to learn to be ready if God forbid we need them to lead us in a time of war. And so there's got to be some way to do that isn't like a one slide on a chart kind of way. Like, we really need to think about a culling of talent is healthy, but it's got to be done, thoughtfully. And it should, I think, be like literally personality dependent, hard cuts, but who are the most talented that if we had to go to war, who would we absolutely need and want to have on the team? And if they do it that way, that's great. I do not think, I am not a Hegseth fan at all. I do not think he's operating in that way, and that scares the heck out of me given the stakes right now.
And then the last one in the lightning round, the consolidation of EUCOM and AFRICOM, as has been reported by a few people.
Similar theme. I think it's not right, and specifically giving up SACURE, started by Eisenhower. I mean, or not started, but first held by Eisenhower, is a true retreat in a critical theater at a critical time that will make all our allies question our loyalty and will make all our adversaries more emboldened. And so, again, I think a mistake.
If we stay over near Eastern Europe, the obvious question is about the Russia-Ukraine war. What does that conflict teach the U.S. about defense industrial base health? What are you pulling from it when you get the latest news?
I mean, that could be, for all of us, I think we've all spent many, many hours thinking about that. One, obviously, what's old is new again, and that we got to go back to fundamentals of 155 rounds and key pieces of land maneuver warfare and air. But then also we need to figure out, as the Ukrainians and the Russians sadly have done, how to integrate super low cost, $100 level drones and UAS, not hundreds of thousands of dollars drone and UAS. So I think those are lessons obviously everybody's familiar with here. The other thing that I think is important to take away is, and a bunch of my fellow armed services Democrats were trying to argue this, first privately and then publicly with the Biden administration. Early momentum and signaling matters, and I feel like we just drip just enough to keep the war prolonged and at huge cost to our allies. And if we had just sent more clear signals and capabilities faster, which is more risky, of course, we could have potentially changed the course and not be where we are now. And if we don't take that lesson away, I'm worried that that's almost certain to be repeated.
So you would have liked to see F-16s, Abrams go in sooner?
Absolutely, and I think there's a clear, with no partisan or political layer to it, that's just an objective military or geostrategic analysis would say that was the obvious thing to do. I get the politics, I get the risk of nuclear escalation, but I think we got that balance wrong and we were overly cautious.
And so you're a combat veteran, and the other day at CSIS, you said when you were in the field, you were handed, quote, useless garbage tech, excuse me. In retrospect, what's maybe one piece of hardware or software you would have liked to have in your hands in Iraq, and how might that have made a difference?
I did say that. I think we all felt that at some level. At the time, what I was actually talking about at that time was for those of you that were in the early 2000s, the DCIGS, DCGS, supposed Intel analysis system that literally in our and most every maneuver unit sat in a corner and gathered dust, and maybe we used the laptops to do something else with at a huge cost. And I think we all know the story of that one, where it literally took Palantir suing their own customer and winning to have an actual competition, which they then won. And I think that was one of the most important moments to actually, one of your earlier questions of what's changed and how have we gotten here. I mean, it literally took that to disrupt and send a message that competition is what is what we need. So I guess in that sense, I didn't know of Palantir at the time. I was deployed in like 07 or 06, 07, 08, but that's essentially what we all knew we needed. I was an intel officer, so in my realm, that would have been a massive game changer, obviously. But you can scale that across the full spectrum with all the capabilities. And I do, I know we're running out of time, but I think like we should not miss the moment to say, looking back on those days, we have come a massive way. And Second Front has been key to that. A lot of great companies and individuals have been key to that. And we have a lot more to go. But when we decide we actually want to do the thing and we're willing to up the risk, and Congress backs it up, and the president's willing to put it out there, we can do it. So I think we just have to put the pedal to the metal on that.
I'm going to squeeze in one last question here. As a New Yorker, on a scale from 0 to 10.
Go Knicks.
Okay. I was going to ask about pizza. How's DC's pizza?
Oh. Pizza's terrible. Bagels are terrible. It's all terrible. Get me back to New York as quick as I possibly can.
Congressman.
And go Knicks. Game 6.
Congressman, thank you for your time today, and thank you guys for tuning in.